it's really warm here, so I'm going to say a nice lager shandy would hit the spot. Right.
Okay, would you go for a half or would you go for a pint?
Half a lager shandy is hardly worth bothering. Half a lager shandy.
And what you can do, here's the tip as well, is if you don't like a lemonade shandy, you could get a non-alcoholic beer and put that in and then have that as well.
Okay, so half a non-alcoholic beer and lemonade.
No!
Just the water,
Half a non-alcoholic beer and half an alcoholic beer.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
this
the
is very
shandy
good.
with the non-alcoholic
Oh,
beer
I
and
see.
the
This is a
lemonade.
whole new feature. Anyway, today's I'm glad that's clear. Today's confession comes from Bryony. Simon, I would like to confess my sins to you all. Let's call me Bryony.
Yep.
Says Bryony. This dates back to the early 90s when I was a carefree 20-year-old. I used to frequent one of the 2 nightclubs in our lovely town. Every weekend it would be one or the other. My friend and I knew quite a few people, so we'd have a cheap night out, as our usual trick would be, let's go and talk to him to get a drink out of him, and then we can say goodbye. Mm-hmm. We were strutting our stuff on the dance floor, probably to 2 Unlimited or something similar, all the rage back in the day. I seem to remember this. When we ended up dancing with a couple of lads. Anyway, I ended up giving him my telephone number. The landline was all we had then, thank heavens. Anyway, I couldn't really remember what he looked like the next day.
Okay.
It's the lager shandy.
Yeah.
But my friend described him as a geeky-looking bloke. Right. A few days later, whilst at home, I was in my room, and my dad shouts up to me, "Here, Bryony! There's a bloke called Nigel on the phone." Well, who's that? Oh, I don't know any Nigels. Ah, it's the geeky lad who was at the nightclub. So, do you fancy going out for a drink? He asked. I was very quiet back then. I didn't want to say no. Yes, I said, okay. I'll pick you up on Saturday then, he said. Oh, no, I thought I'm going to have to go out with him now. Well, you had just said yes, so I guess you
how
do.
it works.
Kind of how it works.
Yeah. He picked me up and we went to the pub. I immediately was put off him by his very dull brown shoes.
Oh, dear.
And he had he had 2 very large red marks on his nose where his glasses had been.
Wow.
I have to say, Father Simon, anything used to put me off back then. Also, I have to say he was quite boring and I couldn't wait to get home.
Okay. Starting to lose patience with Bryony.
At the end of the night, he dropped me off and he said, "How about another date? How about next Saturday?" Because I didn't want to say no to his face, I said, "Oh, okay then."
Oh, right.
Why did I say yes? Anyway, the day before, he calls me to check that I was still okay for the date, and I still said yes. Great, he said, I'll pick you up at 8 o'clock. Okay, I'll see you then.
My goodness.
I mean, you know, I thought, I really, really don't want to go on this. Well, why did you? Anyway.
Don't say
On the
yes then.
exactly on the Saturday afternoon, I decided that I really, really didn't want to face another date with my boring man with red marks on his nose and dodgy, boring shoes. So I called up my friend and I explained to her what was happening, and could I actually go round and pick her up so that I wouldn't be at home when he came to collect me. It would just be easy if you'd said no, really, anyway. So I went round, I picked her up, and we parked at the bottom of the opposite road to where I lived with full view of my house. We sat and watched him drive to my house, knock on the door. I thought my dad must have said, "Oh no, she's out," because then when we watched him, he was crestfallen and he got back in his car and he drove away. Oh. And we were laughing at him in his car. Apparently my dad, Ray, actually said, "Let's say Simon is from the East End." Apparently when he calls it,
Oh, I see.
Nigel, is it? Listen, mate, a word to the wise. You need to smarten up. You need some decent shoes if you're going to call round at my ass. And and ask for my daughter. All right. Also, mate. Also, word of advice: try to be less boring. Just lighten up,
Wow.
and lose those annoying marks on your nose while you're at it.
Oh.
Got it? Off you go.
Me.
Off you go, sunshine. Shut it.
That's
Anyway,
it.
I just made that bit. He didn't actually say that. Nice one, Dad, says Bryony. He understood and he'd obviously heard me talking about him. However, I do realise that I now need to ask for forgiveness. As I now know that I should just have said no there and then. I shouldn't have led him up the garden path. Or even when he called me to double check, maybe that was the moment that I should have said no. And then we sat and we watched it all. It was very cruel. but I was very timid at the time. I hope that I can be forgiven so that I can stop feeling bad that he had driven from another town to pick me up for nothing. But he was boring. Funny, though, he never called me again. That is a very funny thing. I can't imagine why he sort of let you go at that point. Let's check in, though, Bryony's confession. I think Sister Susie's sounding a little bit cross.
Well, Bryony, I really, really, really wanted to be able to forgive you because you were young and you were shy and maybe you just didn't have the confidence to say no. And you know, that's okay sometimes. You'll get that confidence. But you were quite mean and you laughed at him and his dad was really mean and he'd driven all the way from another town. So maybe it would have just been better just to not give him your number in the first place. So I don't think I can forgive you, Bryony, I'm afraid.
You need to buy some decent...
I wanted to.
You need to buy some decent shoes if you're going to come around my ass.
Yeah,
my daughter. Brother from another gutter.
I did think that the payoff was going to be, and me and Nigel have been married for 30 years. Unlucky.
And he's still boring.
Yes. You'd have to have a heart of stone not to be on Nigel's side for this. But in the words of Two Unlimited, no, there's no limit to Bryony's pride. Oh, yes, indeed. Definitely forgiven.
What?